Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. Real Estate Coaching Radio is the nation's #1 daily radio show for realtors who demand authentic, real-time coaching. Get ready for fluff-free, unfiltered, full-strength honesty about what's truly working to get you into action, helping others, and making money now in today's real estate market. Now to our hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
3, 2, 1, and we are back. Welcome back, everyone. It is Monday, June 22nd, and there's a lot going on in the world, as all of you know, and our primary focus is, always will be, helping you guys stay in action no matter what other things are going on around the world, no matter what's in the news, who's the president, what the political this is and the other things are. And I've received a number of emails from you guys and texts. A lot of you text Julie and I directly, which is great, thanking us for giving you direction on maybe behavioral best practices in this really turbulent times of a lot of social unrest and all the rest of it. Some of you guys are feeling between a rock and a hard place as to how, are you supposed to be taking some sort of political stance on the social issues? Are you supposed to? No, the answer is no. You guys should absolutely be neutral, and remember, your whole mission as a professional is to be of service to other people. You do not have to take a political stance or a political leaning or fly any particular flag in order for you to basically be of service to other people. And oftentimes that's actually going to work against your mission, which is helping other people and helping yourself in your business. So I want you to, I appreciate the fact that all of you guys are in agreement with our stance, or a vast majority of you. There were a couple of dissenters who were hoping that we'd somehow take you were trying to influence Julie and I to your political leanings. It's not that we didn't appreciate what your intention was, or even frankly appreciate what your political stance was. It's just, in our humble opinion, it's not appropriate from a professional's perspective. So we're doing our best to basically give you guys an out so you don't have to essentially be politicized. Julie?
That's right. So it's your job to, yes, know what's going on in the world with regards to how it affects you, your family, and your clients. You can know what's going on without having to participate in all of it. Okay? Your job is to participate in your business and your life. Okay, so today's big news story, lots of different places covering this, is Manhattan is finally opening back up. Today is the first day that brokers there have been able to show anything. Manhattan real estate prices could drop as much as 10% this year as New York City attempts to reopen. Now, keep in mind that this is a big story because New York City is the largest real estate market in the whole country. You want to talk about volume? Monthly, historically, New York City trades about $2 billion per month. So they've been locked down for 90 days. That's $6 billion that they're already behind, and they've been in a buyer's market since 2016. So this is a big story. And remember, we've been reporting since that CoreLogic report came out that by this time next year or even earlier, they're reporting that if you average everybody together, we'll be down by 1% to 2%. But remember, that's an average, and places like Manhattan may come down significantly more than that. So that's the story right now. And this report got into great detail. They said that between 1 and 2 million properties should be able to come back. There's a lot of demand for that. That's going to be affected the least. 5 million and up is going to be affected the most, and that includes a lot of new construction towers.
When she says affected, she means basically the sweet spot in Manhattan is something for less than $2 million.
Correct. Yeah.
And she means the stuff that's over $5 million is basically, walking zombie houses that aren't going to ever sell.
Thousands of days on the market.
Right, thousands. And the same thing happens in Miami, and same thing happens. And just so I know, Julie and I are from Columbus, Ohio, and we throw these numbers around. Our average sale price for a long time we sold real estate was like $250, $275.
I was going to say $5.
And then we ratcheted it up to close to $1 million. So, I realize most of you listening are baffled by these big numbers, but the reality of it is if you're living in New York City and if you want to have a house that's suitable for your family in a safe place that's near schools and parks and whatnot, you're spending $2 million. And even at that, it's going to be full of compromises.
That's right.
And a $5 million purchase is going to be more aspirational. So in the coastal areas of the world and of the United States, and $2 million is basically what it takes to have a safe house.
Yes, that's right. They said for any kind of livable square footage, you're looking at $2,500 a square foot.
Yeah.
Not $250, $2,500 a square foot. So it's an expensive market, but it's something that the world is watching. So everybody's reporting on that. And I did search. There's a lot of, dramatic, tough news about the economy, and I always try to look for some good things. So here's my good part. Gilead to begin human trials for the inhaled version of the coronavirus drug remdesivir.
Good job.
I've been trying to pronounce that. So why is this news? Because being that it's inhaled, it's easier to deliver, and it can't be administered in a pill because its chemical makeup messes up the liver. So I thought to myself, I'm glad somebody knows that. That's good, right? So again, that's they're already in trials for that. Okay, so next.
It is worth mentioning, though, the coronavirus in different markets is obviously starting to make a comeback. It looks like there's going to be second waves that are happening in different parts of the world. What it does not appear is going to happen, at least in the United States, on the same scale, as it does not appear there's going to be any sort of more uniform reaction from the federal government. I don't think there's going to. There's no indication there's going to be some sort of national shutdown if there is a return, and there will be most likely maybe regional shutdowns, or at least there'll be like New York City, for example, right? So,
rules.
I mean, who knows? But just monitor it because it's relevant. Because if you're selling in an area that was hyper-vigilant or is hyper-vigilant now, where people are going to the extremes to follow, they're walking around with masks on outside, which technically you don't even have to do. But if that's what they're doing, you could pretty much be resting assured that if there's any sort of meaningful uptick in the number of new virus cases, they're probably going to flip right back to the stance of shutting things down. And if you're selling real estate in that particular market, you better be very mindful of which direction those, the winds in the literal sense are headed.
Well, I had a coaching client last week, the Kenmores in eastern Washington State. Their state was ready to be phase 2. They had an uptick in cases. They decided to stay in phase 1 longer. What's phase 1 mean? You're not supposed to be going to your office, things like that. So this is going to be very local.
But this is what we're going to be living in. This back and forth, what's happening, what's your governor going to do, right?
Sure.
This is how it's going to be until there's essentially a viable therapy. So it's so interesting to think, Julie, even back to early March, just this very topic seems so bizarre, and now it's not even 6 months later, 90 days later, and we all just gotten so used to saying, there's a hot spot, and now they're going to do quarantines again.
How quickly we've
adapted.
Yes, which I think that's a good thing. Now these next two stories I shared with you because we're cautiously and temporarily very optimistic because the demand is so high and because inventory is so low. One of my coaching clients I spoke with today had like 25 people at her open houses. She's expecting maybe 10 offers. It's good and sold. But she said one of the things that's happening is they're having, because of the COVID restrictions, they have to form a line outside of the open house and 6 feet away. And she said, add some rain to that. She had her husband put up a pop-up tent to protect people. Agents were bringing people, getting mad that they had to wait. I mean, this is all real. Okay, so I get that, and multiple offers and all the rest and overlist. But at the same time, we have to be mindful of the facts. U.S. faces, quote, avalanche of evictions as rent protections expire. Okay, so this was a CNN story. But they're talking about that renters in 42 states and Washington, D.C. have received protection, but that's starting to run out now. And we don't know if that's going to extend or not. Next to that is the Zero Hedge report that says 30%, which is a staggering figure, 30% of Americans did not make their housing payment in June. Okay, so this forbearance thing continues to be the story. When
was it really? I haven't
30%.
Read that article. Holy crap!
Yeah.
Now, of course, that would be. This is from Apartment List. Yeah, that's actually a good source. We've used their information before. Yeah. That's really amazing. So 30% of people, now keeping in mind, it's not 30% of homeowners, it's 30% of people with a mortgage.
Right, that's right.
Right. And I think if I remember correctly,
because people with the paid off aren't going to be in forbearance.
And something like 50% of all homes in the United States are paid off, something like that.
It is a very surprising amount. Now, and nobody's reporting on, our property taxes also falling behind. These are all trailing stories. So how is that going to affect both these stories, the Apartment List story, the Zero Hedge story, and the CNN story? All of that data, they concluded, spells a housing adjustment.
Adjustment, air quotes.
Yes.
You missed Julie's air quotes. And so going back to the article that was from CoreLogic, and you got one of your numbers wrong, they predicted an overall reduction in home value by 2%. And then the second thing you said, you were correct. In some cases, it's going to be significantly higher.
Like Manhattan was there.
Yeah, Manhattan, but also you're going to see slowdowns across the country because the nature of essentially this readjustment that's happening. All these government bailouts and all these different eviction moratoriums and all these forbearance programs and all this stuff has, PPP, even EIDL loans, has just caused everything to essentially kick the can down the road, in hopes that maybe by the time all these things expire, there's going to be some sort of miraculous recovery to the economy on a whole. And look, guess what? Julie and I are definitely holding out for that. We're hoping and praying. That's what, we coined the phrase, 2020 will hopefully be remembered as the year of miracles. We are still optimistic that there can be a cure for the virus, that there can be some sort of meaningful recovery, that people won't, this time next year be dealing with essentially a lot of financial hardship. But the reality of it is, the numbers point to the fact that we are going to be in a completely different economy and a different housing market next year. And we are definite advocates of hoping for the best but preparing for the worst. What most people do is they do a lot of hoping but no preparing. So we are begging all of you to not wait to see if we are right. Act as if we are right. That way you're over-prepared going to the future. Now, the problem that you might run into mentally and emotionally is if you start operating out of fear, what happens is you're going to let it go too far, and then you're going to stop taking action in preparation for some big gloomy Martian invasion, right? So you're actually going to stop doing the very things that you should have been doing in preparing. Preparing isn't sitting around and waiting and watching CNN or Fox News, right? We got to be very careful that we're bipartisan in our criticism of garbage news, right? So preparing is getting into massive action to overcome whatever negative momentum might be coming your direction. You have to swim harder, work harder. And one of the things that we prepared for all of you, and again, I really appreciate all the kind words that you guys are sending us, is the free coaching program. And all you've got to do to be a member of the free coaching program and get the 90-day massive action plan and all the other things we created for you is just text the word survival to 31996. Text the word survival to 31996. Now, I know literally thousands of you have done that over the last 90 days. You've joined the free coaching programs. You've done everything we've asked you to do. And you are, guess what, more prepared now for a changing market than you would have been. And maybe you're more prepared now than you ever have been. Maybe you're able to save money. You've gotten your financial ducks in a row. That's fantastic. For those of you who are falling behind and are behind the curve with what you should have been preparing, what you should have been doing to prepare, text the word survival to 31996. We're going to text you back membership credentials to the free coaching program. Log in, and the first thing we want you to do is download not only the 90-day massive action plan, but go to the real estate, what is it called? What would you call that?
90-day massive action.
The other one, the
survival plan.
The survival. No.
Treasure map.
These are all there waiting for you.
What are you looking
the Ultimate Agent Survival Guide.
I'll buy a vowel.
I was testing you.
Okay, Ultimate Agent Survival Guide.
Ultimate Agent. And the first part of the Ultimate Agent Survival Guide is all the things that you can do to take advantage of all the government programs that are there for you to take advantage of. Right. So make sure you guys do that urgently. And take all this stuff seriously. Look, we're not doom and gloomers. We're not. We are just people that are practical. We're people that, if we are just blowing sunshine up your skirt, trying to make you feel good, all the while we have it in our backs of our minds that you're going into essentially a changing market ill-prepared, that in our opinion is unethical. We are committing coaching malpractice. So we will always have you err on the side of being overly cautious, so then you can be overly prepared. Julie's got another story.
Yes, I'm not sure exactly what this means, but I think it's pretty interesting. The Fed begins rationing coins as Americans hoard cash. Having closed the U.S. Mint and halted production, blaming COVID-19, after a surge in demand for gold and silver coins and warned of the danger of using bills, once again blaming the pandemic, and choosing to, quote, quarantine cash for the sake of Americans' health, Fed Chair Powell quietly admitted to lawmakers this week that the Fed will be rationing coins as the circulation of coins across the U.S. economy ground to a halt during the pandemic. So they said until the shortage is resolved, the Fed is taking an unusual step of limiting the amount of quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies sent to banks to, quote, ensure a fair and equitable distribution of coin inventory. What do you make of that?
Did they insinuate that coinage is made out of silver and gold? Was that what you just read? Because if that's what they said, that article's BS.
Oh, no, they said after a surge in demand for gold and silver
coins.
Oh,
okay, got it.
It's like they're reacting to that.
Right, yes. Well, but that goes to what we talked about yesterday on the Sunday podcast. Mm-hmm. Like, if you want to know don't listen to what people say, listen to what they do. And there was another report, and we talked about this yesterday on our Sunday podcast, which you guys should definitely be listening to. I'm looking at our statistics right now. 10,000 of you listened to it yesterday, which is great. So the reality of it is that there was a surge in people saving money. Now, so people might be saying that they're not anticipating that there's going to be harder times ahead, but based on their behavior, that's how they're behaving. And by the way, that's usually a precursor for a deeper recession, is when people stop spending money. When the velocity of money slows down, i.e. people are hoarding and not spending, that is not necessarily good for businesses and even your business. So guys, make sure you're planning accordingly. And also, it's incredibly critical that you know, no matter what happens in the market next, who the president is, what interest rates do, any of those types of things, it doesn't ultimately matter, because there'll still be a tremendous need for caring, competent, mostly skilled agents. If you want to learn more about our coaching program, just text the word Harris to 31996. Just text the word Harris to 31996. Next, Julie.
All right. Well, I have 2 things that I love and no things that I hate. So we're trying to even the score with the negative news here. And then I've got to get to Premier Coaching. All right. So one thing that I thought was interesting, most of our listeners are involved with real estate one way or the other. Country Living has this great list, which I think is really interesting to know about 50 of the most famous historic homes in America. And you and I have visited quite a few of these. The Hearst Mansion in California. We've been to the Vanderbilt House in or the Biltmore Estate in North Carolina. Some of the Frank Lloyd Wright houses are on here. You guys are involved in real estate. You should know about historic houses. So that's just really good sort of armchair reading, and that's in countryliving.com. You can find that online. And then something I signed up for because I'm just that nerdy. There's a guy named Chris Hadfield who is an astronaut. He wrote a great book called The Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth. He just came out with a masterclass series of 20 classes where he's actually going through a lot of the things that he learned.
That's the astronaut from Canada, right?
Yes, that's him. Okay, and one of the things that he says, which sounds a lot like one of our sayings, is, the more you prepare, the less fear you have.
Yeah.
Proper previous planning prevents pitifully poor production. So he's going through that astronaut training. He talks about, some of the science of how rockets work, the price of exploration, capsule design, and we've been watching all of the SpaceX stuff. And the thing that I like about Chris Hadfield, so if you guys look him up, it's Hadfield, is that he obviously is a super smart guy, but the way he writes for somebody who is not an astrophysicist is completely understandable and is really good reading. So I signed up for that.
Actually, you just triggered me, and I know you want to go to Premier Coaching.
Yep.
So those of you who are in the coaching program, Head Coach Julie is headed off to Premier Coaching. Make sure you listen live. I actually want to tell you something I learned from that book. You don't have to listen. You know it.
All right.
Okay. All right, get off to Premier Coaching, Julie Harris.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so in his book, and you guys should, Julie and I listened to it. This was a couple years ago. He talked about a interesting phenomenon that he discovered when he went from being a fighter pilot into becoming an astronaut. And he said that a lot of the people, he claims that, I'm sure he's being correct in his representation. He said he never was given any particular, he wasn't born with any higher set of skills or talents. He just was a hard worker. Basically, he didn't give up. He didn't quit. Those types of characteristics. But he said he often would run into people that were naturally gifted or naturally talented, were naturally more athletic, had a natural ability to sustain higher G-forces. They had they're more, easily adapted to the extreme physical environment of being a fighter pilot. And a lot of these men had gone through being, great students, going to Ivy League colleges, going to LeGrand, who is one of my personal coaching clients. I interviewed him for our podcast, and he went to Harvard. He went to Yale. He would join the Marines and became an F-18 single seat fighter pilot. And, all these things. So a lot of these guys that are fighter pilots have been the alpha males of alpha males their entire lives. And then what happens is when they go to astronaut training, and a lot of, they almost always, he said the frequency of these guys getting divorces was shocking. And he was married, and he didn't want to get a divorce. He didn't want to screw up his relationship with his wife. So he describes how he thought about why is it that all these otherwise men, these great men who had their acts together their entire lives, why was it that once they tried to become astronauts that a large percentage of them were getting divorced? And he concluded, and it was fascinating, and I'll loop this back into why it's relevant to all of you guys in a second if it's not already obvious, is that he said for the first time in a lot of these guys' lives they were being challenged. And they're being challenged because to become an astronaut is a hell of a lot harder than doing any things these guys have done before. And for the most part, these guys maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 or 11 being, maximum effort, requiring every ounce of you to get through it. These guys were able to get through, most of the things in their lives, as he describes it in his book, by, putting forth an effort of 7 or 8. Maybe occasionally they'd have to ratchet up to maximum effort, but because they were, innately more equipped to essentially be fighter pilots and do all these other things in their lives, it was somewhat easier for them than Chris Hadfield said it was for him. And then they're finally faced with their first real challenge, which is trying to make it to become an astronaut. And because they were struggling for the first time ever, they were then trying to find something in their lives that they could feel control of or even to blame. And so they would, he said a large percent of them would get divorced. And I thought that was very fascinating because that really does draw direct parallels to a lot of the things that Julie and I see in a real estate market like this. Because what has a tendency to happen, and I want you to think about this, is when your business, if you choose to let your business go out of control, where you start then creating financial problems, what inevitably happens is people create other problems in addition to their financial business problems. For example, health problems. Maybe they start drinking too much, or they start using a controlled substance, or they start developing problems with their marriages. I have personally seen this. I'm 50 years old. I've seen this happen with, I don't even know how many people. It happens all the time. And why does it ultimately happen? Were there underlying problems with their marriages maybe before? Probably. I mean, marriage is sometimes tough. It is what it is. But were they compounded to a 100x because of the fact that they were experiencing financial problems? Maybe for the first time ever they were questioning, or their egos were not able to essentially adapt to what the new market was demanding. That most certainly was the reason. If you want proof of that, think about the astronauts. They weren't having marital problems, at least not to the point of considering divorce, and then all of a sudden they're being essentially put in these extreme environments where they're questioning for the first time, and their egos can't handle the fact that they might not have what it takes. They might not have the right stuff, right? You guys understanding what I'm saying? So that's the reason, that's one of the underlying reasons why when Julie and I are so absolutely maybe too aggressive, frankly, trying to get you guys to be prepared. That's the reason why, because we know you will not experience business hardship in isolation. It will affect other aspects of your life. Because if you all of a sudden are worried about your food and your energy and your, how you're going to make your car payment, or maybe it doesn't, it isn't that bad, but maybe you're no longer able to pay for the private school for your kid, or maybe you're no longer, you guys get the point. You see how these things all compound, but ultimately, do you see all these things are all in your control? So you have to be, these astronauts were not aware of the fact that they were developing, marital issues. And they were, because they were wanting to have a sense of control of something. And you probably will, without being consciously aware, create other problems in your life that compounds your lack of preparedness for this changing market. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you get the point I'm trying to make here? It is critical that you get your act together with your real estate business. It is critical that you do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level now. It is critical that you understand that it is going to require a hell of a lot more work for a longer period of time than maybe you've ever experienced in your life to make it through this next phase in the real estate market. And guess what? The good part is you can do it. The good part is you can do it, and not only can you do it, but on the other side of that is everything is better. You're going to experience all kinds of, essentially success, levels of success you couldn't have conceived of. And the reason why is because you will have done something other people weren't willing to do. You will have learned the skills necessary for the new market. And here's the really fascinating thing. The better you become at what you do, the less competition you have. And we all compete, so let's not even joke about that. But you will be called out on listing appointments, and people will just choose you. I'm thinking of Rob Johnson. Rob Johnson, for 4 or 5 years in Greenwich, Connecticut, worked his butt off, worked tirelessly, skipped vacations, just did things that, frankly, financially he didn't have to do, but he chose to still do them because he had the goal that he accomplished last year. And now, this year, he's still working hard. He's still making all the right moves. He's still the number one agent in Connecticut, still one of the number 8 single agent. He did $137 or $40 million last year. He's going to do well over $100 million this year, it looks like, even with COVID, right? And the thing is he's not backing off. And the business now is coming to him easier because they see the fact that he has become, dominant in his marketplace after a relatively short period of time, might I add, in one of the hardest, most competitive markets in the country. All of you guys can do the same thing because of this market. It's one of the many blessings of a changing market like this is all the people that, frankly, remember, we're talking competition here. It's real. Competition is real. All the people that won't adapt, won't learn, will choose to allow themselves to be obsolete. And if you are learning what the new market demands, then you will have business coming to you that you never would have otherwise had a shot at. That's how you build reputation. And if you guys want to think, that's how you ultimately build your brand. Your brand comes off essentially the benefit of all the work you've put forth. It comes off essentially putting in hours and days of effort, maybe a huge amount of work, more than you ever would have conceived you could even do, right? That's what it's going to take. And we're not going to lie to you. We're not going to sugarcoat it. We're not just going to blow sunshine up your skirt just to make you feel good. We're going to tell you the truth because that's what it's going to take. And guys, it's probably going to be, again, hoping for the best but preparing for the worst. In your minds, don't think it's just going to be like, a couple months and everything's back the way it was. Mentally prepare that this is going to be a longer-term recovery phase, and it's going to, require you being elastic in your skill set and your own mindset about your potentiality. Because, again, every single one of you were designed to change, to adapt, to not be complacent. When you try to be complacent or you try to essentially, hope things return to whatever normal is, that's what screws you. Because you're waiting too long to adjust. You're waiting too long to adjust to the market as the buyers and sellers need for you to be. Guys, there's never been, there soon will definitely never have been a time when caring, competent, and skilled agents have been more needed. Make sure you're part of that conversation. You don't allow yourself to become obsoleted. And I know a lot of you guys are interested in joining EXP. I get texts from you every day. Some of you have said, I wasn't clear, Julie, if you and Julie were actually in EXP or whether you guys were just proponents of it. We're absolutely proponents of it, and we're absolutely in EXP Realty. If you want to join our EXP Realty group, if you want to be part of Julie and I's own personal EXP group, all you got to do is text me directly at 512-758-0206. 512-758-0206, and let's have a conversation. And by the way, when we have that conversation, I'm going to ask you a series of really, tough, direct questions to make sure that you got your wits about you and make sure this is the right move for you. 99% of the time it is, but just be ready. We're going to have a real coaching call if you're ready to move to EXP. If you're just EXP Realty curious, just go ahead and text the word EXP to 31996. Text the word EXP to 31996. In the meantime, guys, thank you for continuing to make this #1 listened to daily podcast for real estate agents in the nation. Your homework for today's podcast, it is from every podcast we do, is share the podcast with others. Help us get the word out. We certainly appreciate you guys being such loyal daily listeners. Have a fantastic day.
This program has been a presentation by Tim and Julie Harris, Real Estate Coaching. For more information on our real estate coaching and training programs, visit our website at timandjulieharris.com. Remember to tune in weekdays at noon for upcoming shows, and until next time, thank you for listening to Real Estate Coaching Radio with Tim and Julie Harris.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.